All right, this is one of those days, Alice. This is one of those days where I'm just absolutely thrilled and excited. We Let me tell the story this way. Last Friday, a few days ago, I was doing my show and I had nothing to talk about. I have as you guys know, you guys listening in the Connecticut audience, Friday was kind of a weird in between news day, and then out of nowhere on YouTube, I ran into Vince Dow. Now, Vince Dow is a Christian conservative political commentator. You should check out Vince Dow TV on YouTube. He's got a huge following, which I assume has doubled or maybe even tripled. And what we've got here is there was Vice News put on this panel about a month ago. Asian Americans debate model minority and Asian hate. And on this panel are essentially they grabbed the first 11 people out of, I would say, a Brooklyn loft party that they could find, and then Vince Dow. And it went a little bit like this. Now, the person that you're going to hear causing the trouble is Vince Dow. Listen to this.
Assimilation, not just good or bad, necessary. I don't think it's going to be possible for America to survive as a stable, functioning society if people don't, to some degree, say, well, here's what we're going to commonly agree upon.
But who gets to choose it?
The majority culture, I suppose.
And what's majority culture?
The people with power.
And who's people with power?
Who's people with power?
White people.
Well, I don't know if that's...
Say it! White people. It's okay.
I don't know if that's necessarily so true. I mean,
Wait, can you unpack? Yeah.
Let's elaborate.
I don't think a particularly white, quote-unquote, interest controls things like
in America.
Pop culture.
Do you believe white supremacy exists?
I think there are people who believe in it. I think there's people who all believe that their race is superior.
So you don't believe in white supremacy?
Do you believe America is a white supremacist state?
No, not at all.
And not found.
No white supremacist state would even allow us to be doing this. I don't understand. So white supremacists, there's just KKK people walking. Actually, I go around New York City. I notice that, I guess Brooklyn a little bit different. Most of the people here are not white, and they're doing their thing. So I don't understand.
What does doing their thing mean to you?
Going to work.
Are they making the same amount of money?
Wait a second. Vince Dow, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Great to be here. And a shout out to some of your Connecticut audience. My dad actually grew up in Middletown, so somewhat familiar with the state. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get a lot of calls from Middletown today. It's absolutely. So is the point with these people, is the point to not debate? Is the point to say ableist or white people? Did anybody want to actually engage in debate?
White people, right? I mean, I'm not sure. I think a lot of them showed up expecting to have a kind of like, I guess, one of those roundtable discussions where everyone just is like, oh, I agree with that. And because you've seen some of this from some of these Vice panels, it's like nobody really goes at each other in just one big circle of agreement. Recently, they did a debate on colorism, whatever that means, and they did not invite a single conservative to this panel. But in this one, they made a mistake, actually invite the conservative. And then, when I said very basic things, like I wouldn't say I exactly delved into any super controversial opinions on that panel, judging by the fact a lot of people who weren't even on the right were saying, I agree with you. That's common sense. Like, work hard, don't commit crime. You know what I mean?
Right.
But they were absolutely shocked, flabbergasted to hear these things for the first time. It's crazy. And some of those kids, Yale educated, Ivy League educated, the fact that they can go through 4 years of supposedly the top academic institutions in our country and be shocked at 24, 25 years old. I'm 19, Tom. Just
oh my gosh, you're so young.
to hear that don't commit crime, and it's the craziest thing they've ever heard. I don't know.
It's interesting, and it's interesting to me too how these basic facts are totally unknown to them. I mean, things that are super established, like being raised in a 2-parent household is super great for kids. I mean that's a shocking thing to a lot of people if you say that. And I think that the Asian community in America in particular challenges so many of these assumptions about white supremacy that people on the left have, and they don't know a lot of these facts. I remember a year or two ago, NPR during the whole Stop Asian Hate thing published this big thing with all these statistics about how the Asian community is totally diverse and all this stuff, and couldn't even get themselves to admit the fact that Asian achievement in the US is higher than white achievement on average, no matter how diverse the community is and spread out. And these facts do, and I'm not saying there's not ways Asian Americans are discriminated against for sure. Like look at the Harvard court case, but it presents itself so differently for Asian Americans that it's such a problem for their narrative. And like to have a panel like this and the things that you were saying to them were so shocking to them. It's like they've never encountered any of this information before.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, funny story on this topic. We go back to the Ivy League education thing, and they asked me, right, do you think America's a white supremacist state? And I kind of like slyly respond, you could say, like, well, I don't see KKK people walking around anywhere. But I would say that if America supposedly was a white supremacist state, it would be run by some of the most incompetent white supremacists out there. Because even if you want to say, well, oh, KKK, well, that's like just explicit. What about implicit? They always say this, like implicit racism. Well, I look at the way a lot of our institutions are crafted and structured between affirmative action and the diversity regime and the pop culture, the stuff that comes out of Hollywood, all this stuff. And I would say that if America is a white supremacist state, it's doing a terrible job, because I think in many ways, a lot of these institutions and culture actually discriminate against white people, right? On average, and sometimes Asians, right? When it comes to the affirmative action thing. But I should point out one of the kids in the green shirt, who I guess you can't see on the radio, right? But one of those guys that was debating me with the most on the panel. Fun fact about him, I learned this weekend. He got accepted into Stanford, and his only essay, all he wrote for his essay was he wrote hashtag Black Lives Matter 100 times on the essay.
Oh, fantastic!
And he got accepted, as a brown guy, as a minority. And it's like, if a white supremacist institution, they might take a few to be like, oh, well, we're not racist. See, but the guy underqualified doesn't actually write a college essay, and they take him in just because he writes Black Lives Matter 100 times. Like I said, if America is really being run by white supremacists, they're incredibly incompetent at their job.
No, Vince, you know what? I'm sorry. I give that guy credit. He just extorted them. That's
real. Yeah. True.
You better. Hey, you see what I wrote here? You better act to fall in line, and they did. It's remarkable. Stanford's like the second best law school in the, whatever. It doesn't matter. But so when they change the subject, if you nail them down on one thing, and then he says, "Well, do they get paid equal?" Or
well, Asian Americans get paid equal, I would say.
But they keep moving. They're fighting for the sake of fighting, Vince, or else they would have a good faith exchange.
Well, this is true. Yeah. Every single time you'll notice in that panel that I respond to one of their questions, they just totally shift the goalpost. And quite frankly, I wish I probably could have noticed this at the time. But, when you're being surrounded by like 10 people all screaming at you, I was just trying to respond to what they were saying. And so I wasn't quite picking up on it, I will admit. But when you watch it back, it's like I would say one thing and they would say one thing, I should say. I respond. And then they, instead of like, because I respond proving them wrong, and they'll just like bring up something totally different. And you see a lot of those clips. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Let's listen to another one here.
Trends that are generally true in the Asian community, not of everyone, but are generally true. Usually you have families that are sticking together. You have, people are taught to work hard in school, not get into trouble. I think that translates to why Asians en masse are successful. And I don't think you have to be Asian or white for that matter to.
People who are listening, they are doing like these smash cuts to people reacting, the progressives around Vince reacting, saying, "Oh my God," he's going into very uncomfortable territory for them.
To not have kids out of wedlock, not commit crime, not cause trouble, whatever it is. It's just a matter of like, well, common sense. That's what makes people successful. And if that's so-called assimilation, having a nuclear family, buying a house, going to school, whatever it is, then yeah, okay, call me a pro-assimilation then.
I think there's a difference between assimilation and erasure.
Ooh,
yes.
She got you there, Vince. She got you. Erasure, haha. What about the point he just made saying don't have kids out of wedlock, don't commit crime? What? Erasure, yeah, high five. What kind of point system is this?
It's funny because that is only like half the answer. I think there's more to assimilation than just not committing crime and like being a functional human being, right? There's more to assimilating to American culture than that. But I kind of just said that comment because we just debated about assimilation, and notice how they took that 100% seriously and were like, no, you can't tell so-and-so to assimilate by not committing crime and by, having a functional family and being responsible. And it's like, Michael Knowles brought this up on his show. What exactly is she trying to say? Is she trying to argue that like minority culture and crime, for instance, are inherently embedded, and hence it would be erasing minority culture to tell people not to commit crime? And if that were the case, which I'm not saying it is, but if that were the case, why would it even be bad to erase that part of that culture? Like, that is a bad aspect of culture. Committing crime is a bad thing. Having kids out of wedlock is a bad thing. Whatever else I said, not doing any of that stuff is a bad thing. But I don't know.
and the point that you made, like, none of those things, you don't have to be white or Asian to do any of those things. And like, I went to a high school a long time ago that had, a lot of so-called like tiger mom type parents, and some of them are Asian, but like there were also Jamaican parents whose kids did amazing in school, and everything that were immigrants that wanted their kids to work hard and all this. It has nothing to do with race, but if those are the things that make kids successful, then why aren't we sharing them with everyone? Like, I don't get it.
And they say these are Western constructs or something, but I feel like this is just the reality of human life on Earth. Like, if you want to build something, you have to build it. If you want to exist in a society, you have to follow the rules of that society. Like, it's not particularly complicated, but I don't know. Welcome to my generation, I guess.
And I've got to think, Vince, that all of these people in the panel are people of privilege. I think, these are all. Hold on, I just want to let's play one more cut. This is my favorite cut because now we suddenly inject World War II into this. What this panelist, this woman in front of Vince who's got the purple hair, who's like the very like Yas girl, like Slay Queen thing going, whatever. She hits him. She really hits him hard with the heavy ordnance.
The more in common that a society has with one another, the more likely they are to work together and build things in society and not constantly be fighting each other and at odds with each other.
Did you think the Japanese internment was a good thing? Because that was a real assimilation situation. You know what I mean?
No,
I recognize that the term assimilation has negative history and facts associated with that word. So we do have to be careful in how we choose, because assimilation for people of color have not been good to us historically. That's factual. So let me ask you.
We're discussing the model minority myth and the fact that
Japanese internment is a classic example of assimilating Asian Americans.
No, it's not. It's a classic example of internment. I mean, they intern people.
Why?
Why
did they intern them? Because they saw them as other. Because they saw them as dangerous.
Not really. Well, yes, they saw them as dangerous because, and I don't agree with it, but left-wing President FDR at the time saw it as a national security risk.
So you're a Republican, right?
So
you're right-wing, right?
I want to make sure.
It took them 20 minutes to figure that out.
Yes.
That's kind of funny.
Because you're a Republican, right? She moves right off of the fact that the internment of the Japanese was not assimilation. What a moron! There's a whole story to be told there, and it's been an interesting one to listen to, and it's obviously a horrific thing that you're correct, FDR did. But it wasn't assimilation. The Japanese had come here and were assimilating. They had beautiful properties.
Yeah, they were being unassimilated from being a part of American life into something else.
Absolutely. The story of all the beautiful businesses, et cetera, in the West Coast that closed and were taken from them, essentially, in their livelihoods, that's a tragedy. That shows precisely the opposite. But how is it possible that these people don't know the first thing? So what do you think they're told, Vince, about Japanese internment?
I don't really know, to tell you the truth. I mean, I was thinking about this. I think this is a kind of a complicated issue because on one hand, Japanese internment isn't often the most talked about thing in history. Like, the leftists will bring it up, but you notice for something that could be used so against kind of the story of America, oh, look what America did. I feel like in a lot of ways, it's not talked about a lot in comparison to slavery, segregation, all the other stuff. And I've thought for a long time, part of the reason for that, and this is kind of why I brought it up, is that FDR is like the modern hero of the left, right? Kind of like the creator of the modern Democratic coalition, New Deal, his sort of story of, left-wing progressive FDR took down the fascists in World War II. That whole kind of story is the source of the modern left's authority. And so that's why I think it's not often brought up. And when it is, it's not often tied to FDR, which I think is very interesting. But it's also important to note that the Japanese were not the only people who were interned during World War I and World War II, right? Germans were interned, Italians were interned. But, by definition, that is just simply not assimilation, and it's like I'm trying to say, well, you should join the customs, work within the culture, and then she's just like, so you want to intern Japanese? I don't know.
So it's funny, Vince. I talked to George Takei of Star Wars a few years ago, who played Sulu on Star Wars, and this is peak Trump, when Trump was the kids in cages stuff. And so he said, well, what it reminds him of being in an internment camp in Japan, what Trump was doing
not in Japan.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, in World War II, during World War II in the United States, and I said, well, that was FDR. You don't harbor more resentment for Trump on this than you do FBR for internment, do you? And he said, yes, I found it in my heart to forgive Franklin Delano Roosevelt for what he did. So Trump did internment now.
Trump is not forgiven, but FDR is.
Like I said, it's because FDR is like the source of the modern left's authority, and the idea that he was the best president to ever exist, and he did everything right, which he didn't, but he did everything right, and so that's, in my opinion, why it's something that's not often talked about.
So let me ask you something. Since this incredible performance has been shown, and really, it's funny because you were aided by the fact that you went in there, you were honest, you were earnest, you were reasonable. You were aided by everybody else being off the hook, just nuts and upset and unstable. I could feel the psychotropic medication, in their minds, trying to work on calming them down. How much of this, and you're 19 years old, so how many of your contemporaries are just not well emotionally?
They're not well emotionally, physically, spiritually. It's just the reality of our generation, I suppose. I'm in college, obviously, too, at this age. And, I can tell you most kids my age, actually, I wouldn't say most. That's not fair to them. But there's a very sizable minority of kids who just are like this. And I think part of the issue is that those of us oftentimes that are maybe not like, epic conservatives or whatever, but are better adjusted, not totally insane in all regards. They basically let themselves get bullied by these like just hyper emotional freaks running around everywhere, which is kind of ironic when you think about it. Cause I feel like in past generations, the reverse would have been true, right? Mm-hmm. The cool kids, the kids who aren't insane and all over the place were the ones who kind of like ran things. But I feel like part of the big problem in our generation is that it's just sort of inverted, where the people who historically probably would have been bullied in school, not saying that's right, but would have been bullied in school, are now the ones doing the bullying, and everyone just kind of sits around and takes it, and it's strange.
Do you think
that's why I started doing the conservative thing, partially because I was like, well, someone's got to say something. I don't know,
Do you think there is a backlash coming? Like, are there more like you? Are there a bunch of people who maybe just they don't have a YouTube channel about it, but are thinking that like this is getting a little ridiculous now, guys, and like we're gonna eventually have to like walk this back a bit?
Absolutely. I mean, I went to school in LA. I went to high school in LA, and I had a bunch of secret allies. I think the issue is just like cowardice. Like they would all privately, hey, I support you, and I'm like, dude, the rest of this not the rest, but this loud minority in my high school class is like, trying to cancel my graduation speech and get me thrown out. It's a long story there, whatever. And I'm like, here, taking the bullets, and that's fine. But all the rest of you can do is just be like, hey, I quietly support you. And that's part of the problem, right? What's that famous quote? The only way that evil can succeed is if good men do nothing. Like, right. That's just the problem. I don't think it's exclusively a Gen Z problem. I think it's a societal problem. The people with the right ideas have cowardice, right?
Yeah, Alice and I were just talking in our last...
That swimmer Riley Gaines tweeted something like this recently, where she's come out against having men compete in women's sports. And, she tweeted something recently where she said, I used to be so appreciative when all these people would come to me and secretly say like, oh yeah, I agree with you. Thank you for doing something. And then she said she realized that them secretly thanking her was like why this is allowed to continue. She's like, if all the people who know this just defies common sense would just all say something, like we could be done with this already. But it's really thanks to the people that know that it's all crazy and won't do anything that we're in this situation now.
I think that's why, our side just needs more leaders, right? Because that's, to be fair to kind of just your normal person who sees the craziness, that's just not really how human beings work, right? Movements are started by leaders, someone with the charm, the charisma, the voice, the courage stands up, and then everyone follows them. Like, that's just kind of how human beings operate. And so I would say, it's easy to just hope the common sense people get the bravery, but I feel like no one's going to really do that unless we stand up and say, we're going to lead this, we're going to, hey, the rest of you come on. Cause that's how humans really work, right? That's how things really start. So,
Well, but also I think that for you in your case, your age is a huge thing because we can listen to Jordan Peterson all day and he's going to take his beating and and do his thing. Abigail Schreier, she's been established, she's doing it, but it's young people who need to mobilize. But I don't know, in that room where you were doing the Vice thing, the things, your principles, and you're a Christian and a guy who's got values and a guy who's educated himself so far, apart from the school system, you've certainly an autodidact as well. So these are all good things, but they consider the things you say to be vile, evil, and violence. So how do you reach across the aisle and share ideas with people who consider what Vince Dow says to be violence?
I don't think that reaching out to the far left crazies is such an easy. I mean, I think you should try to reach out to everyone, but I think that the coalition we can build to really, because keep in mind this, they are crazy. Their minds are very stubborn, as you can see on that panel. But like I said, they are in reality a minority in society. And I would say like hard right conservatives are a minority in society too. But I think there's this big population in the middle in America who is either apathetic or apolitical. Or they say, they have views from both sides. I think that how far the left is pushing, and you're starting to see some of these trends in like the suburban politics and stuff, how far the left is pushing, I think there's a lot of like middle-aged people or just moderates in general who are now feeling more sympathetic towards the right, towards conservatives. Maybe they used to vote for Democrats, they voted for Obama, maybe even voted for Biden, but now they're a little bit, what's going on here? Like, I know personally people like that. I think really that's who we got to make the appeal to. And I think if we can prove to the crazies, because keep in mind, they are crazy, but they're also very weak, right? They're weak men and stuff like that. So I think if we build a coalition that's loud and proud enough to kind of stand up to them, I think they'll fold pretty quickly. Because, these are not exactly Spartan warriors we're up against. So...
I mean, do you think the other piece is culture too, especially like around the conversation about like young people where, and this is like a horse that I've like beaten to death 1,000 times, but like I was so frustrated because I came of age during that like Tea Party era in the 2010s, and so many conservatives got elected, and like the culture just got more left though, and I felt like conservatives are supposed to be the people who are like, it shouldn't be the government doing everything. Like, conservatives should be out in the world, like building real stuff, doing real stuff, running companies, starting, like movie companies, making things, like building. And I feel like conservatives have sort of ceded that ground. Like, do conservatives have like work to do winning back the culture? Because it's like almost non-existent anywhere in Hollywood or, the internet and all these areas.
I think part of the issue that exists is that for the past few decades, the conservative emphasis has been on, make money, do the things that make a lot of money, which is good, right? Because you need financial power to win too. Financial power is very big. But there's been sort of this idea that like, if you pursue the arts, if you pursue the humanities, like those are liberal majors, like those are useless, those are... And to an extent, it's like, yeah, you're not going to make the same money as the engineer or whatever, but there is something to be said about art and culture and the way that those types of fields shape the culture and ultimately shape our civilization. Like when you look back to any civilization, what's the first thing you remember is like it's art and it's architecture, right? That stuff shapes culture. And I think that for many decades, there's been a conservative mindset to avoid those things, let the hippies have those things. And now you're seeing the results of that. because art, I think historically in the West used to be very beautiful. You know, you look at the monuments in DC, like those are incredible works of art and architecture. But now you look at the art that's coming out of not just Hollywood. I mean, have you seen like modern art? Like, have you seen paintings, even stuff like
we
that?
have this new Martin Luther King statue by us.
In
It's
Boston.
like
The
this
new Martin
weird
Luther King
disembodied
statue?
arm thing. Like,
It's a brutalist thing. They make it ugly on purpose. I mean, there's been a lot of the stuff. You're right. Is just miserable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's miserable, it's godless, and that's the result, I think, of conservatives giving up, you know, the sort of like cultural building blocks of civilization, you know.
You're at an age where you've never not been online. You know, so when I was your age, there was no online. You know,
Yeah.
maybe there was in NORAD or something, but other than that, none of us could really be online. And so I grew up without that, without any validation from the outside world, without all the information in the world at my fingertips, etc. Who has it better, me 20, 30 years ago, or you now?
You 20, 30 years ago, I definitely have to say. And, you know, I would say I did grow up without the internet for about the first like 10 or so years of my life. I don't know if that was because the technology wasn't there, but my parents kept it out of my hands. But you look at these, and I would still say, you know, the impacts of having the internet from like 10 years old and on, I probably have a much shorter attention span than you, right? Like I have a harder time sitting down. I do notice
That'd be
sometimes
hard.
I have our whole generation, we have really hard time sitting down and like reading long books and stuff. Our attention span's very short. We have this like internet minded brain, but I don't even think we're the ones most impacted. I look at like these iPad kids now. They 1 or 2 years old, they can already figure out how to use the screen. Like some of them
Yeah.
before they can even talk. Like I have some younger cousins and stuff. Before they could talk, they knew how to use an iPhone, and it was insane. And I really worry for those kids because those kids inevitably are probably going to be, you know, quite antisocial. They're going to have very low impulse control, very short attention spans, and that's not even considering the things that they're seeing on the internet. You know, I think the average exposure to internet porn now for a young boy is 11 years old. I bet you that number is only going to go down, you know, with more and more kids getting on the internet. And it's just horrible. And we know that at that age, that's when brains are most impressionable. So it's one thing to discover the internet at 20, 30, even like 15, but to discover the internet at like 5 years old, 3 years old, I can only imagine, you know, what's going to happen. But I think that part of that is for a reason, right? The system can control them earlier. And like I said, that very short attention span and stuff that will make them very easy to control even when they're older. So I think it's all deliberate, you know.
How did you? I think one of the things that we're finding as well is that many people, young people and old people like me, have no spiritual foundation whatsoever. So they're filling it with this craziness and Xanax or whatever it is. But I noticed on your Instagram that there's either video or picture of you getting baptized. One, if you don't mind, how did you come to Christianity? And two, what space is that filling in you?
Yeah, I actually didn't grow up in a Christian household. I didn't grow up Christian. But I started doing the conservative thing in about 10th grade, and you know, there's a lot of Christians in our circles and stuff, and so I wouldn't say it was an overnight thing. You know, I wouldn't say I had that like single experience or revelation, but you know, over time I grew more curious. I think God placed a lot of people in my life that, you know, through a process would eventually bring me to know him. And so yeah, last year I made the decision to get baptized. And in terms of the impact that has had on my life, I would say that it really puts this sort of like modernist world in perspective, right? To know that there is something beyond this moment, beyond, you know, what we see in just this realm around us, and, you know, after this life even. And so I would say that that perspective is part of what gives me the courage, you know, and the willpower to do some of what I do. Because, you know, Tom, I look at our country sometimes, and I think I have the same outlook as you, where it's like, what the heck is happening? Like, this is just how do you like put up with this stuff constantly? And I think it is Christ that gives me the strength to keep pushing and keep fighting, even when, you know, our backs are really against the wall here, you know.
Is that what gives you the strength to, you know, be in a room full of apoplectic progressives who are scowling at you, or is that something you always had?
I like to think so, right? To God be all the glory. And so, yeah, you know.
So, I mean, and this is something we talk about on our podcast sometimes because I'm, from childhood Orthodox Christian, like Russians or Greeks. But Tom has some questions still that he's not sure about. So we go back and forth on it a little here and there. But yeah, I definitely hear you. It's so exciting, and I think there are more young people who are coming to. I mean, definitely in the Orthodox churches, we see a lot of converts coming in, but like I think all the different denominations of Christianity are seeing a lot of people, sort of younger people, get into this too. So maybe, and I think a lot of them are finding out stuff on the internet too, which is, so maybe it's not 100% bad, all the internet exposure, because some
true.
of it
Yeah.
definitely is out there too.
I think young people in the modern world are lacking purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, there's a lot of outlets that they put that in. Some people put it in progressivism, etc. But I think there's a lot of young people who realize their true purpose, and where they can truly find that is in the gospel. So
Vince Dow, you have been fantastic. Thank you so much for everything. Congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
Couldn't happen to a better guy. I'm going to be watching with great envy as you ascend here. 19 years old. My goodness, what have I done with my life? Vince, seriously, thanks for your time, and we really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Take
God
care.
bless.
All right, that is Vincent Dow. He is somebody going places, obviously, and I was thrilled to talk to him. I thought he was a very impressive guy, and I appreciate his time. If you guys haven't seen those videos, you should watch them. I haven't even watched. It's longer than I've even seen, but it's incredible the way they treat him and the way these people around him act. And he's just simply civilized and well-mannered, and it's such a contrast. And it's been like other than the KMS rap of the 4-minute rap of my time delivering pizzas in Tennessee or Kentucky, it's right on the border. Nothing has made me happier on the internet than that. And listen to this. Just listen to this group.
Instead of aligning ourselves with the Black community who've been fighting for racial justice and liberation, right, and acknowledging our own privilege and putting our bodies on the line to fight for these movements, instead we banked on white adjacency, and here we are still being pushed.
First of all, what exactly is white adjacency? Is it working hard, having families?
No. I don't
understand what the issue is. But then number two, let me finish my point. I think it is gaslighting when, again, the majority of violent attacks against Asians are not being perpetrated by white people to blame white supremacy.
White supremacy as a construct is this idea that the norm of American is whiteness.
Yes.
That whiteness is the default.
Standard.
That whiteness is the standard that we all ought to aspire to. And we deviate from that.
It's not just talking about KKK.
Yeah.
It's not talking about lynchings. It's about a mentality
It just is.
that we have absorbed.
It just is, okay? It just is. So just go with it. Can you imagine how miserable a crew that is? It's not just, it just is, okay? And the internment camps, are you allowing to assimilate that? Is that what you mean by assimilation? No, that's not what we mean by assimilation, okay?
Yeah, no, glad you brought that up, because just to clear things up, assimilation does not mean internment camps. So glad we could get that out of the way, that when we're referring to that. But yeah, it's hard for them to talk to him because he is so reasonable and calm and nice and raises such good points.
Yes, and I don't know if it's even. Every once in a while, it's shown so starkly, and obviously the kid's going to get a gig soon. They're already sniffing him out.
Well, if it's not better for him to just keep his YouTube channel, geez.
Maybe, but like Matt Walsh and Knowles have already, sent him messages, etc. It's like that's why when you ask him the question, like, how do you own how does the right start to take over cool culture? That was his chance right there. Come on, plug Daily Wire.
I know.
But no, he does. He was great. All right, so we can move on. We'll throw that out on the. We'll post that very quickly. And guys, watch that video if you can. So, Alice, I want to talk about something different now. Okay.
Okay.
We have time, right? Okay. So you and
and we can do a Patreon show too. Remember, and we have the chat. So.
Okay. Do you want me to just get right to it?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
The chat?
Well, do what you're gonna do, but save some stuff for the chat because we're almost done with the regular show.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Save some stuff for after the chat. You know what I mean. It doesn't matter.
All right.
Go
So,
ahead.
Alice, I think it's fair to say, we have challenges, right? Everybody has challenges.
Everybody
But this
does,
has been an
yes.
especially challenging month.
Mhm.
No doubt about that.
Yes.
But we actually are putting the work in to, make things work out.
Yeah.
We're literally putting the work in, you know, and we're going to be putting the work in. We're going to talk to our little person tomorrow, and it's been. I mean, we are really working on this patient hard.
Mhm.
You know, what was all put. I think it was
Dead on the operating table.
Yes,
put
it
that
was,
way.
and
Yeah.
and the coroners or the lawyers were taking control of the
Mhm.
specimens. So, and I think it's fair to say that that we love each other. Is that fair? I love you.
Yes, I love you too.
Okay. And it's fair to say that I find you beautiful,
Thank you.
and I tell everybody. And for some reason, you're not wholly disgusted by me.
It's true. I
And
do
that's
love you and think you're cute.
That's and it's a great dichotomy. But I think it's a synergy that has us together,
Mhm.
right? Like we just, in a big way, we work together.
We're a team.
We're a team. And we have been for a long time. An imperfect team at times, but
Mhm.
yes. And everybody has told me that very much so. It's like I've never heard so many people want you to just like do a hostile takeover of the burn barrel and me be the second chair, which actually we can talk about if you want to. But so anyway, so we've got this synergy, and I think it's wonderful, and we're really working hard. And there are all sorts of adverse forces of different nature. Like everybody deals with this stuff,
Mhm.
you know. We've got our own panel of psychos who are at the gates, you know.
Right.
So, but sometimes things happen today. Things happen, and this may be my Christianity moment.
Okay.
Things happen that really illustrate that we've come to a plateau and that we have an opportunity. So this is it. Ready?
Okay.
I was in the market basket today. I had a bottle of Chelsea Fire Wicked Hot Sauce in the thing. I got all sorts of food to eat in case we do some Super Bowl stuff with the kids, the big game stuff with the kids. And so we're doing this recipe, which is this buffalo chicken. Is it a dip? No, buffalo chicken / stuffed peppers
Mhm.
recipe. It requires Frank's Red Hot, which I'm allowed to eat. So I go to next to the Chelsea Fire Wicked Hot Sauce, and there's Chelsea Fire Wicked Hot Sauce there. There's no more Frank's Red Hot. And this woman, who's like this goth chick,
Mhm.
is behind me, and she said, "Oh, there's no Frank. Yeah, there hasn't been any. There's nothing." And I said, "Yeah, I don't know. Weird." So I walk around the store, and I'm doing the rest of our shopping for the big shopping day tonight.
Mhm.
And found some good stuff for the kids. Very excited, very excited. And then I found, next to the meat aisle on a low shelf, a bunch of Frank's Red Hot Sauce.
Huh.
Right. And I thought, damn, because this had been like 18 minutes since I'd seen her. It's like, damn. I look around, she's not around anymore. It's like, damn, I wish she could be here, that I could be able to help her, get her outside, because I found it now. So I put my one in my thing and looked to my left, and there she is right there. And I said, "Hey, ma'am," and she looked over here at me and said, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, there's some right here." And I gave her, and she said, "Oh, thank you so much. It hasn't been here forever." And I thought, man, that is perfect synergy. That is what needs to be. That is the light and the truth, Alice, for me. That was my vision.
That's beautiful, honey. It's amazing. On Big Game Sunday.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll tell somebody who cares. I need an additional. I need a 2 plus. I need a wife who's not aloof when I'm not telling.
I'm trying to react to this story like in a way like I care. Is it not? Am I not
You
selling
need to get
it?
better at pretending that you care. It is funny. I barely laughed now. Done laughing. All right, you ready?
All right. Let's hear some Chelsea Fire Wicked Hotline chat calls. This is brought to you by Chelsea Fire Wicked Hot Sauce, which is a much better sauce than Frank's Red Hot. It's totally
Correct.
clean. They use sea salt for lowered sodium. It's delicious. You don't have to sacrifice heat for flavor, and they donate 5% of the proceeds to the Fallen Firefighters Foundation. So really just like win, 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 win.
Hi, Tom.
Hey.
I had to call in after one of the gentlemen that called in that said that you should have been drinking a pint like you're Paulie and Rocky. This man obviously has never had his life destroyed in a divorce.
Yes.
You don't do a pint in a bag, and you don't do those small nips.
Right.
What you do, you find one of those stores, one of those great stores.
All right.
That have the doubles. It's the 100 milliliters for $1.76 instead of $2.
Ooh.
You save the money because saving the money is for the kids. That's also why you don't drink Jack Daniels. You have to get Fireball. It is so much cheaper. You're going to need that extra money, especially after you start paying child support.
Yeah, it's a good point there.
Where does this misconception come from that you'd be paying me child support?
No, Alice lets me know very much so that she might be in a position to be paying me at this point. But that is a good point. I can't do Fireball. It's just because it's got sugar and stuff in it. Yes, I'm weaning myself off of nips as I no longer be traipsing through cities and towns, drowning my sorrows. But I do appreciate that, and we do have. If I ever need to get back there, we are right down the street from the New Hampshire State Liquor Store, so that's all good.
But let me get this straight.
Replica Shattuck.
Hi, Replica.
I replaced Alice Shattuck.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
To be Replica Shattuck for Tom, so we could have something when things go south.
Yep.
Things go south, and now it's going back the other way, it seems. But Alice is now replacing me, who replaced Alice.
Yes.
I don't get what's going on.
I'm sorry, Replica.
You might have to ask Dan, because this is even confusing me.
Well, thoughts?
I mean, I thought you wanted Replica and me both.
You look really pretty, Alice.
Thanks. I don't know. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
You look nice too.
Yeah, I'm wearing this T-shirt. Can you see it?
Let's see. The Wakefield Mole in the chat says your weight loss is really showing in your face.
Thank you. Thank you. I have, thank you. I'm still fat. Let's not kid anybody here. But what's happening right now is I've passed through the portal of I can now angle cameras to make me look thin. I had no
there was no hope.
There was no hiding. There was no hiding several chins. Although I like fat me too. He's a nice guy.
He's a nice guy, but I think skinny will live longer and be happier, and I like that.
Hi guys, Steve from Gloucester. Hope you're well.
Steve.
You had mentioned last week that Greeks tend to be the most beautiful from an ethnic background perspective, and I have to agree with you, as I do have a Greek wife who is absolutely beautiful, and a lot of her family members are just as attractive.
That's what Dan said.
They have a vote, definitely, in my book, and I'm saying this because she's also a great cook, and if I don't vote Greek, I'm going to be hungry. Thanks, guys. Bye.
I know. Greek women are just fantastic. Greek men are fantastic too. In my travels overseas, my mother was a travel agent and worked on a cruise ship, so we were on cruise ships in Europe and all over the place, and we hung out with Greeks and Italians pretty much. Italians who I love, Alice, by the way. Okay, I get along with them.
There's mark the tape.
Apparently, my mother did it too. But all right, so listen. That's not a derogatory thing about you, Ma. That just means she had an Italian boyfriend for a bit. Very classy accent. Oh, by the way, that reminds me of. Remember, I couldn't think of that on Thursday's podcast. I couldn't figure out what it meant.
Couldn't figure out what meant.
Remember, he was talking about the Greek thing, and somebody on the chat.
Yeah, because Dan had said that Greeks were the best looking people.
Right, but I was especially confused during Thursday's show. And should we talk about why, Alice?
Your battery of psychiatric medication.
Correct.
That you're now on.
Yes, as a matter of this new regime I'm on to not be hyperventilating in the middle of the State Street in Newburyport and sobbing. Yes, we've had counseling, and now I'm official. I'm in the game. I got the pills now. And so they made me catatonic that particular day, and I didn't understand anything. And Alice had to drag me around the house by my hand and tell me not to trip. And I had my little my walker with the tennis balls on it.
Yeah, I had to abandon you for the chat that day to go pick up our daughter. So,
Alice, I'm listening to you talk about DeSantis and Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And I voted for Trump twice, and I don't regret it for 1 second.
Same.
I don't think many of us who did regret it, because of the candidates between Clinton and Biden. I don't think he was the clear choice. But also, people that voted for Trump and that are on Trump's side, a lot of them, they're not like you and maybe to a lesser extent like me or like us. Because I've talked to some of them and they don't even know who Ron DeSantis is, which absolutely baffles me. So I don't know if they're just in it because it's something different than a regular politician, or if they were in it because, he was, I don't know, just a bombastic figure or whatever you want to say. But I find it baffling that, so-called conservatives or Republicans or anybody that goes this way don't know who Ron DeSantis is and what he's about, because they should.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I'm always astonished by the extent to which quote-unquote normal people don't follow the news or know who any of these people are or anything, which is fine, but it's just I don't know. It is a tough thing to overcome, and that is one reason that Trump was very effective, is because a lot of people who don't follow any politics at all know who Donald Trump is, because he's just been ubiquitous forever.
Yes.
That's a tough thing because there are, anyone who's, quote, just a politician is always going to struggle with that, because there's a whole bunch of people who don't pay attention to anything. I'll never forget, we were at some charity thing with you one time, some big event, and, Charlie Baker was at it. He was governor at the time. And we ran into some couple that we socially knew from, I forget where, from our town or whatever. And they were like, "Oh yeah, we just met that guy who's the mayor or whatever, Charlie Baker." And they knew he was something, but the concept of governor, the whole thing, and they were involved enough to be at this big Boston charity event and be excited to meet him. But people, it's not as big a thing to a ton of people, which I respect. Yeah. They're probably better off. I've filled way too much brain space with a lot of stupid stuff like this. Yeah. And in some ways, I envy them for not caring.
Yeah, but you're a political junkie. But I think that...
I like this stuff, and I'm interested in it. But it's because I hang around with other people who are, whether on Twitter or in real life, I'm always surprised when I talk to normal people, and they're completely, there's whole worlds of things that are happening in my world in the news that they're just not even aware of that exist.
Oh, totally. And I think that's most people don't have all the stuff in the transit. But with Trump, I mean, the point is that he was a populist hero, and that means that people who are not otherwise interested in politics suddenly take a personal interest in you and the mission. And I think one of the reasons why Trump did that, and I told you that when I was in the hellhole in Philly or whatever, it was Cleveland, whatever it was, that the girl at the front desk liked Trump, and her whole reason is that he lost everything and came back. And she said, "Yeah, he came back from nothing," and I like that. I respect that. I thought, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was weird. I remember around that time, I was talking, I was checking out at a grocery store, and the person checking out my groceries was saying, a lot of that stuff that Trump guy's saying really makes sense. And it's it was still at the time when there were all these candidates, and I was so excited because we had Scott Walker and Rand Paul and all these different interesting people. We were going to have such a great primary where everyone debated all this stuff, and then it was just build the wall, and John McCain shouldn't have been captured. I like people that weren't captured. Well, it was just it was a total hijacking of all this political stuff that I'm into, and it really was a hijacking by normal people.
Yes, it was. But listen to this. Was it a hijacking, or was it the fact that Trump went out to see everybody? He flew he didn't stop. He flew to the Midwest. He flew to the Rust Belt. He flew to every state.
Well, yeah, but the grocery checkout person in Market Basket didn't
I know, but
see him at an event. She just knew who Trump was,
right,
because...
But Trump got to everybody. He went in front of everybody with these express, rallies, and they were fun. And he showed, an empathy for people's lives, etc. And there was no BS. Nobody was talked down to. He had a good time. He always gave somebody something unacceptable in politics to deal with.
Yeah. But it is an interesting peak, and I don't think Trump is this guy, because I think Trump just didn't have some of the other qualities that you need to be Napoleon or a whatever. He didn't
God,
have.
can you imagine the Trump debating Napoleon on the stage?
But it is an interesting insight into how these cults of personality go. And I don't mean that even like in a bad way. It's just interesting how some people have this charisma. And for whatever reason, like the Trump, it doesn't necessarily hit me the same way it hits other people, the Trump charisma, because I'm not that big a Trump fan, as people know and are willing to complain to me about frequently. I just like, it's interesting to see people so excited about someone just for that person, because most of our politicians don't have that. Like Obama had shades of that for sure, but and sometimes other people, like maybe Clinton had a little bit. Certainly FDR must have, to be elected all those times, to have this like bit. But it was interesting certainly to watch it in action, because I think the closest thing we had in my lifetime was like the Obama thing, but I think that was not as powerful as the Trump effect. Do you?
Hold on.
As like for what his
Calling room
particular
service,
for what his particular personality worked on people in this
Obama
way.
was definitely a huge populist presence. I mean, he was huge.
I
both
feel
of them
like
were celebrities, Alice.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like
I
Trump
think
was more so.
I think maybe, although in a lot of people will have no recollection of this, and you don't really, although it affected you. I think that, like the, but it wasn't as big, of course, but the Perot thing.
Oh, yeah.
Brought a lot of people who weren't really interested in.
A lot of people who later became Trump people, I think.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Like, my mother was getting signatures for Perot. He made, for people who were bored by politics, and that was my first election voting in that. He was exciting and funny. Mm-hmm. He was great.
Yeah, I don't remember the 92 Perot campaign, but I remember the 96 one.
The 96 one was not the one to be at. The 92 one was great, because he was like, he said, as far as race goes, we got white people and black people, and nobody's going anywhere.
No,
so
actually, I do. I was in kindergarten. Okay. I do. I was, and we had a mock president. We all had to vote in the mock presidential. I do vaguely actually remember in 92. That's true. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's fine. I was done.
Reminiscent. Okay.
Okay.
Are we through the chat?
No, we got two more.
Okay.
Hi, Steve from Merrimack.
Hi, Steve.
Tom.
Yeah.
And this is a serious question.
Yes.
Can you please tell me that you were kidding when on Friday you said that War and Peace and Anna Karenina were written by Dostoevsky?
I know. Thank you.
Can you please restore my faith in you?
It's Tolstoy.
That was goofy.
I know. He's an idiot.
Thank you.
What?
Thank you.
Thank
you, Steve. I appreciate
that.
Hey,
I got to go to my SATs also.
Did you crack 600?
Not in math, no.
No, I mean combined.
Yes, I did. I think I got a 9 something, I think. And then I took it again, and I got a lower score. I was losing information.
Yes. Tom's showing his Apple bigotry yet again the other day. I thought about this. So, Apple users love to think they're so different. Everything's so different. You get the 3 little icons in the top right to close out the file, just like an X as you do in Windows. The whole thing looks just like a Windows device, but it's all gussied up to be an Apple product. Well, it made me think, those people who are pushing for plant-based meat, which is not meat, it's just plants that are mushed together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what an Apple device is.
Incorrect.
So,
plants mushed together. There you go.
Tom is a soy boy.
What?
So true.
Alice, what are you saying? You're not saying. I don't think I'm a soy boy, do you? Do you? That is vicious. Vicious. Hold on.
What? Why are you getting all these social calls right now?
My daughter is just. Hello?
I'm confused. So you want the ultra organic micro whatever?
Yes.
Okay. And can I have last 2 orders?
Yes, I said yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I said I was confused.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
She's her mother's daughter.
Okay.
Right?
With that,
Right.
we should head to the Patreon show because I think we still have a few other things to talk about, including the UFO invasion that we have to discuss.
Goodness.
So we'll do that in the Patreon show right after this. So if you're on Patreon, just stay there. We won't keep you away from
What
the
are your
big
hands
game
doing now?
right
Are you
too
surfing?
long.
Are you
No,
surfing?
No. And, yeah, of course, you can do that at patreon.com/burnbarrel. But as always, the show is free at burnbarrelpodcast.com. We'll see you there.
C'est la vie.